me ask you something. Have you ever had one of those mornings where you're awake, your phone is right next to you, your to-do list is already waiting, and you know exactly what needs to get done, but somehow you just can't start? Not because you don't care, not because you're distracted. You just feel stuck. And almost instantly, your brain whispers the same sentence: maybe I'm just lazy. If that thought has ever crossed your mind, don't skip this video, because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you see yourself. This is the story of someone named Cortex. But somewhere along the way, you might realize it isn't really his story. It might be yours. Every morning, Cortex made a deal with himself. Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, he'd wake up early, go to the gym, answer every email, finish every project, finally get his life back on track. Tomorrow always sounded perfect, until it became today, 7 a.m. The alarm rang. He opened one eye, reached for his phone, and hit snooze. 9 minutes later, the alarm rang again. Another snooze, then another, and another. By the time he finally sat up, the first feeling that hit him wasn't tiredness, it was guilt. Not because he'd done something wrong, but because he'd already disappointed himself. Before the day had even begun, he picked up his phone. 27 unread emails, 3 missed calls, a calendar full of meetings, messages from friends he hadn't replied to. Days ago, he looked at the screen, took a deep breath, and quietly said to himself, "Just answer one email." That's it, one email. His thumb hovered over the screen. 30 seconds passed. 1 minute. Then he locked his phone, placed it face down, and stared out the window. Not because he didn't want to do it, because somehow he couldn't. At first, he blamed a lack of discipline. Then, a lack of motivation. Eventually, he blamed himself. He bought productivity books, downloaded habit trackers, watched hours of motivational videos. He even convinced himself that one more morning routine would finally fix everything. For a day or two, it worked. Then everything collapsed again. Every Monday felt like a new beginning. By Wednesday, he was already calling himself a failure. Weeks turned into months, and something inside him started to change. He stopped making plans, stopped getting excited, stopped believing that next week would be any different. One evening, he walked past a mirror and almost didn't recognize the person looking back at him. Not because he looked different, because the hope in his eyes was gone. He leaned against the sink, looked at his reflection, and whispered something he'd never admitted out loud before. Maybe this is just who I am. Maybe I'm just lazy. And here's the scary part. The biggest lies are rarely the ones other people tell us. They're the ones we repeat to ourselves until they start sounding like the truth. But what if Cortex had been asking the wrong question this entire time? What if the real question wasn't, "Why am I so lazy?" What if it was, "What happened to my brain?" Because the answer to that question was about to change everything. That night, Cortex couldn't sleep, not because he had too much to do, because he couldn't stop thinking about one question. What if I'm not lazy? For the first time, he didn't search how to become more productive. He searched something completely different. Why do I feel like I don't care anymore? One word appeared over and over again: burnout. At first, he dismissed it. Burnout? That's for doctors, CEOs, people working 80 hours a week. I'm just bad at managing my life. But curiosity is a strange thing. Once it gets into your head, it refuses to leave. So, he kept reading. And somewhere between the articles, the research, and the stories, one sentence stopped him cold. Burnout isn't the absence of motivation. It's the result of carrying too much for too long. He read it again, then again, because for the first time in months, something finally made sense. Think about your phone. When the battery drops to 1%, it automatically starts shutting things down. Brightness gets lower. Apps slow down. Background activity stops. Not because the phone is broken, because it's trying to survive. Your brain does something remarkably similar. When stress becomes constant, when pressure never stops, when every day feels like another battle, your brain changes priorities. It stops asking, "How can I help you succeed?" and starts asking, "How do I keep you alive?" Success becomes secondary. Survival comes first. That's why the smallest tasks suddenly feel impossible. Replying to one text, starting one assignment, folding the laundry, making one simple decision. It's not that you've forgotten how to do those things. It's that your brain is trying to conserve every last drop of energy it has left. But Cortex didn't know any of this. Instead, he did what millions of people do every single day. He opened social media. One person had launched a company. Another had finished a marathon. Someone else was posting their 5 a.m. routine, their perfect habits, their perfect life. And without realizing it, Cortex made the most unfair comparison possible. He compared his hardest chapter to everyone else's highlight reel. Every scroll whispered the same message. Look how far behind you are. The guilt got heavier, the exhaustion got deeper, and the voice inside his head grew louder. See? You're the problem. But it wasn't true, not even close. Because burnout does something most people never realize. It doesn't just steal your energy. It quietly begins to steal your emotions. One day, Cortex noticed something that scared him more than exhaustion ever had. He wasn't just tired anymore. He wasn't just overwhelmed. He had stopped looking forward to anything. And the next thought that entered his mind would change this story forever. I don't think I care anymore. But was that really the truth? Or was his brain sending one final distress signal before shutting down completely? That's where everything changes. The next morning, the alarm went off again. Same sound, same room, same ceiling. But this time, Cortex didn't hit snooze. He didn't grab his phone. He didn't even move. He just stared at the ceiling. Not because he was tired, because he couldn't find a reason to get up. And for the first time, there wasn't even guilt, just silence. That scared him more than anything else. Because guilt meant he still cared. Silence felt different. A few hours later, his best friend called. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Cortex looked at the screen, watched it stop ringing, and quietly placed the phone back on the table. Not because he was angry, not because he didn't love his friend. He simply didn't have the emotional energy to pretend he was okay. Days passed, then weeks. His favorite songs became background noise. His favorite food tasted ordinary. Movies he'd been waiting months to watch sat untouched. Even weekends stopped feeling like weekends. Life hadn't disappeared. His ability to feel connected to it had. Most people think burnout looks like someone crying, breaking down, completely falling apart. Sometimes it does. But sometimes, it looks like someone smiling in public, answering, "I'm good," while quietly thinking, "I don't feel like myself anymore." And here's what almost nobody talks about. Burnout doesn't steal your ambition first. It steals your curiosity, then your excitement, then your joy, until one day you wake up and nothing feels worth looking forward to anymore. That's why so many people think they've become lazy, because from the outside, it looks exactly the same. But inside, something completely different is happening. Your brain was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to protect you. Imagine running a marathon without water, without food, without rest. Eventually, your body forces you to stop. Not because it's weak, because if it didn't, it would break. Your brain works the same way. When stress, pressure, constant self-criticism, and emotional exhaustion go on for too long, your brain pulls the emergency brake, not to punish you, to protect you. The problem is, most of us misunderstand the signal. Instead of asking, "What is my brain trying to tell me?" we ask, "What's wrong with me?" And those two questions lead to two completely different lives. That evening, Cortex went outside. The sun was setting. A year ago, this would have been his favorite moment of the day. Coffee in one hand, music in his headphones. No distractions, just peace. Now, the coffee had no flavor. The music sounded empty. Even the sunset felt like just another sunset. He stood there for a long time, trying to remember the last time he genuinely felt excited about something he couldn't, and then a thought crossed his mind. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. Maybe I was never lazy. Maybe I've just been exhausted for longer than I realized. That single thought didn't fix his life overnight, but it changed something far more important. For the first time in months, he stopped treating himself like the enemy. And sometimes, healing doesn't begin the moment your life changes. It begins the moment you stop blaming yourself for surviving. But one question still remained. If burnout isn't laziness, then how do you actually recover from it without falling into the same cycle again? That's exactly what Cortex discovered next. That night, for the first time in months, Cortex didn't search, "How do I become more productive?" He searched something much simpler. "How do I recover from burnout?" And almost every expert said the same thing. You don't recover by pushing harder. You recover by listening to the signal you've been ignoring. That's when Cortex realized his brain had never been trying to stop him. It had been trying to save him. For months, he kept treating himself like a machine that needed better discipline. But he wasn't a machine. He was a human being. Humans don't break all at once. We crack. One unnoticed day at a time. One skipped break. One sleepless night. One, "I'll deal with it later." One, "It's not that bad." Until one day, your brain quietly says, "I can't keep doing this anymore." Recovery didn't happen overnight. The next morning, Cortex still didn't feel amazing. He still wasn't overflowing with motivation. But this time, he stopped asking, "How can I force myself to do more?" Instead, he asked, "What's one small thing my brain can handle today?" One email, not 20. One short walk, not a 5-mile run. One honest conversation. Instead of pretending everything was fine, and something surprising happened. The less he fought his exhausted mind, the more it slowly began to trust him again. Because healing isn't built through massive breakthroughs. It's built through small promises you actually keep. Months later, someone asked Cortex, "What changed?" He smiled and gave an answer. That surprised even him. Nothing changed overnight. I just stopped calling myself lazy and started listening to what my brain had been trying to tell me all along. Maybe that's the message you needed to hear today too. Because maybe you don't need another productivity hack. Maybe you don't need another motivational video. Maybe what you've needed this whole time is permission to stop treating yourself like the enemy. Before you leave, I want you to remember just 3 things. If you forget everything else, remember these. First, laziness avoids effort. Burnout wants to try, but no longer has the energy to keep pretending. Second, rest isn't something you earn after success. It's what makes success possible. And finally, the way you speak to yourself becomes the way you see yourself. So be careful with the labels you repeat every day, because your brain is always listening. If you stayed until this moment, thank you. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because it tells me you chose to understand yourself instead of judging yourself. And just like I promised at the beginning, I have one small request. Go to the comments and type just one word, awake. Nothing else. That one word tells me how many people finish this journey from beginning to end. And if this story reminded you of someone, a friend, a sibling, or maybe someone who's been quietly struggling, share this video with them. Sometimes, people don't need advice, they just need someone to explain what they're feeling. And if you want more stories that combine psychology, neuroscience, and the hidden patterns of human behavior, subscribe to Cortex, because this channel isn't about becoming someone else. It's about finally understanding the person you've been all along. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's a story waiting to be understood. This is Cortex. I'll see you in the next story.